Hello, today we're going to be doing Module 5, Lesson 7. We're going to identify and represent shaded and non-shaded parts of one whole as a fraction. Okay, so let's start with our application problem. I'm going to grab a pencil. Robert was snacking on a small container of applesauce. He ate half of the container. His mother and his sister were upset he didn't save much for them. So I'm going to change this a little bit. This is what was in the curriculum, but doesn't make much sense to me. Because listen to this. His mother and his sister were upset he didn't save much for them. Now, if it's one of those snacks that would be in your lunchbox, no one's going to be upset if unless you got like a little baby sister. So let's say a small jar. Let's change this to jar. This makes more sense to me. Robert was snacking on a small jar of applesauce. He ate half of the jar. His mother and his sister were upset he didn't save much for them. Now that's when me as a mother would be upset too. Makes more sense. So he split up the remaining applesauce into 2 bowls. Robert said, "I ate half, and each of you got 1/2. Is Robert right? Draw a picture to prove your answer." Okay, so first let's start with the jar of applesauce. So here's the jar of applesauce. Okay, now Robert ate half. So this up here is the part that Robert ate. Robert ate that half. This is what's left. So then he takes 2 small bowls and he splits this up. So this would be 1 bowl, and this would be 1 bowl. Okay. Now, his mother and his sister were upset that he didn't save much for them, so he split up the remaining applesauce into 2 bowls. So he divided the rest of it in half. Robert said, "I ate 1/2, that's what he ate, and each one of you got 1/2. Is Robert right? Or is his mother and his sister still a little bit upset?" Well, let's think about that. How much did the sister and the mother get? If this is the sister's bowl and this is the mother's bowl, how much did they get? I'm going to change the color here to red. Now, let's pretend and divide what Robert ate in half. Now, if you look, what do I have? I've divided this into fourths. So Robert would have gotten how many fourths? He would have gotten 2/4. And the sister would have gotten 1/4. And the mother would have gotten 1/4, right? So, if you're his sister, are you happy? No, you're not, because he got twice as much as you did. Doesn't make sense. Just because you cut what is left over in half doesn't mean that it's the same amount just because we say the word half, right? Because this half is not the same size as this half, is it? Definitely not. This half right here is not equal to this half. Okay, now I have another question. Why can't the container be partitioned into thirds? Why can't, if this is, I'm going to redraw. So this is up here. This is the part of the applesauce that Robert ate. How come I can't partition it into thirds? Because there's 3 people, right? How come I can't partition it into thirds? Well, let's think about that. I'm trying to make room to draw another picture here. Okay. Now, if I were going to draw the same jar and divide it, that's a little bit bigger. Okay, trying to be equal here. Those don't look right on that one, actually. Let's just erase it, get it out of the way. Okay, I want to make it as equal as possible so it's easier to see. So right here, This is what we drew before. This is the part that Robert ate. Now let's say I want to divide it into thirds. So I'm going to eyeball it to kind of see if I can make equal thirds. That's pretty close. Not exact, but pretty close. What do you know about the thirds? These are halves, and these are thirds. If I've already cut one in half, how come I can't divide it into thirds? Well, let's look at this. A half is this big, right? And a third is this big. I've already cut, if I cut half, I've cut into this part. See, this is my half. I just moved it over. So I've already done a part of the third, haven't I? A whole third and then another part of the third. So that's just not going to work. I can have a third here, but then I still have another part of this third right here. So I can't divide it into thirds because half is too big. It already cut into a second third. See? Okay. Now, moving on. This is similar to what we've been doing the last couple lessons. Okay, so let's look at this. I'm going to draw you a beaker. Now, this is our beaker. Okay, and I'm going to fill it half full with water. Alright? So I'm filling it half full with water. Now, I have a question for you about my beaker that is filled half full with water. What about the part? So I know that this, when I look at this, is divided into two parts, and one part is filled. What about this part? What about the part that's not full? What if the part is just empty air? Can that be a fraction? Well, yes it can. Just because it's not shaded in doesn't make it part of the fraction. So let's make it be a rectangle instead of a beaker. Now, I shade in this part right here. I have two parts. One part is shaded in. Interesting. How many is not shaded in? Well, there's two parts and one is not shaded in, right? Right? Okay, so let's talk about that just a little bit more. Okay, what if I have this? I'm trying to make a square. And I'm losing my pencil. Here we go. Okay, now I'm going to shade in this part. If I shade in that part, what is the fraction of the part of the square that is not shaded? What fraction is not shaded? Well, how many parts is it divided into? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I cut it into fourths. How many is not shaded? 1, 2, 3. So 3/4 of the square is not shaded. Okay, interesting. How about if we draw a parallelogram? Not a parallelogram, a trapezoid. Okay. I'm going to erase my left over here. Okay. I made a trapezoid. And I divided it into parts, and I'm going to shade some of them. I'm going to shade this one, and I'm going to shade this one. Alright. How many, or what fraction of my part, what fraction of my whole shape is not shaded? Kind of tricky to know how to say this. Well, how many parts is it divided into? 2, 3, 4, 5 parts it was divided into. And how many is not shaded? We only count these. 1, 2, 3. 3/5 of my trapezoid is not shaded. Alright, let's do one more. Now, I'm going to get all crafty here on you. Oh my goodness, look at that shape. This is not a regular polygon, is it? we've got an unusual shape. And guess what, right here? I'm shading this one. I'm shading this one. Okay, so here's my part. Here's my whole shape. How many parts is my whole shape divided into? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 parts. How many of these parts are not shaded? Well, I can do a simple subtraction problem. I can do 11 take away 2. Well, that would be 9. Or I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here, I'll do this so you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9/11ths of this shape are not shaded. This is what we're going to be talking about today. All the parts that are not shaded. Yesterday and the day before, you've been focusing on all the parts that were shaded. Now we're looking at the rest of the shape. All right, good luck with your homework. I'll see you soon.